Welcome to the Education Today podcast, where we discuss all things education from preschool to college and career. I'm your host, Solanke. Let's jump right in. Well, it is a new year and a second semester. I record these way ahead and then put them out months later, so it's probably April right now, and you're like, what's she talking about? But this was the first week back after Christmas break. And let me tell you, I have never been in a situation in all of these years of teaching where everybody came to school. Everybody came to school. These kids' parents are like, I'm tired of you being in my house all the time, eating all my food, telling me that you're bored after I spent hundreds of dollars on things for you to play with at Christmas, and just get out of my face. Go to school. No excuses. Everybody was here. That's just, I mean, I had one class this week that was biology regular, 33 kids, 34 kids. Everybody was there. That never happens. Everybody was there. Why is everybody here? Because your parents kicked you out and said, that's it. You've had your 2 weeks, go back to school. But I have COVID. I do not care. Wear a mask. You're going to school. So yeah, everybody was here. It was an interesting week. I debated about whether or not to go in on the first day back. So if school goes back on Monday, that Monday is usually like a teacher planning day, and then the kids go back on Tuesday. And I went back and forth about whether or not to go in that Tuesday, because I know that with the younger kids, that first day back, they've lost their darn minds. They have forgotten, or they act like they've forgotten what it is like to be in a school. They act like they've never been in a school. They've never had rules and procedures, and they've lost their darn minds. And with the older kids is probably easier. High schoolers, they have gotten used to sleeping until 2 p.m. And that first day back, they're like zombies. They are half asleep, struggling, drinking Monster energy drinks, and on their phones. But I figured it might be wise to allow the teachers to reestablish their rules and procedures. And then I swoop in like a few days later when the kids have remembered who they are. They've remembered who they are. The little ones have remembered how to walk in a line. They've remembered their school structure for the day. And yeah, so I decided it was not a good idea to go in on that first day at least. Let the teachers take care of that hot mess that is the first day back. There was actually a storm that came through Tampa Bay. Well, Florida, actually. The first week of school, it actually did a lot of damage in the Panhandle, and I think in Alabama too. A lot of people lost their homes in the Panhandle. So this storm was forecast to come in, and I think it was the first day back for most, if not all, of our counties in this area. So school districts had a decision to make, because this storm was coming through on Tuesday, which for most of us was the first day back for students. And it was coming in between 3 p.m. to 5 p.m., which is dismissal time for, at least for middle schoolers, is like 4 p.m. Some elementary schools might be about 3 p.m. too. Most high schoolers seem to get out around between 1:30 and 3 p.m., depending on the county. But that storm was going to roll in. It was really going to disrupt middle school dismissal. So our school districts really had a decision to make. And at least one school district canceled school outright. I think 2 changed that day to an early release day, which I think was the best strategy, actually. Get everybody out early since the weather was okay. It was a rainy, nasty day, but the gusts and the winds that would disrupt, and the rain that was going to disrupt dismissal was really coming through in the afternoon. So those 2 counties, I think it were 2 counties that did early release. I think that was the best decision. And then unfortunately let me not say unfortunately, some of our counties decided to do school as normal. And one of them was one of our coastal counties, and they had a tornado touching down right around middle school dismissal. Crazy. I think there was one even in one of our largest counties around the time that middle schools would be getting out. I mean, thank God that no kids and no school buses were harmed, but I know school districts don't make those decisions lightly, but I question those who had school, especially if the middle school is not letting them get out early at the time that that storm was forecast to blow through. It was an interesting start to the semester. But thankfully, I don't believe anybody was hurt. Um, I mean, not in the Gulf Coast anyway, not in Tampa Bay, I should say. I know in the Panhandle it was really bad. It was ended up just being a really nasty day, and I was reading comments online from parents who were, especially in our coastal counties, who were very angry at the way dismissal went for their mainly middle schoolers, but some elementary. The way dismissal went, we said dismissal was like just walking through treacherous conditions, and the kids who have to walk home, and even like the school staff who have to stand outside and monitor dismissal were very upset that they were doing that in these huge gusts and the storm and in a storm, in a thunderstorm, with lightning and huge gusts of winds coming through. Just walking through my neighborhood after the storm, I saw there was a lot of debris everywhere. So nobody wants to get hit with that. And I'm talking about tree debris, like tree branches, smaller branches, really. Yeah, that was an interesting start to the semester. But yeah, so I did not go in the first day. I decided that that was above my pay grade to try to reinstate rules and procedures and um, whip kids back into shape again. But I did go in. I did go. It was a shorter week for me, but I did go in and I did all electives this week, which was really interesting because I always envy elective teachers for some electives because they get to teach kids in subjects that kids want to be in. It's a little different for those of us teaching core subjects because everybody has to take English, math, social studies classes, and science classes. So especially certain social studies classes, like everybody has to take like world history, U.S. history, and everybody has to take like algebra 1, geometry. I think algebra 2. I'm not sure. So whether they like those subjects or not, they have to do those classes. It's same with English, English 1, 2, 3, and 4. They have to be in there. So you get kids who love it, but we also get kids who hate it. But elective teachers, they get to teach kids in the subjects that the kids love that the kids do well in, that the kids get to choose. I want to be in this class because I love doing this. So I got to be in high school music, and I thought that the teacher would leave worksheets. And I came in, and it was not worksheets. The first class was AP Music Theory, and it was a small class. Those kids came in, started playing keyboards. There was keyboards everywhere. They started playing keyboards even before the bell rang. They were in there playing keyboards, and it sounded really great, actually. The only thing was, because this happened pretty much every period in the morning, the kids would come in, start playing keyboards. Um, the only thing is, to me, that discordant sound of people playing different tunes at the same time. I call it a cacophony is the right word. Discordant. That was a little too many different things going on. But even made a comment to one kid about, this is a great way to start the day, isn't it? I would much rather do this at the beginning of the day than do pre-calculus. And they were like, yeah, it is. If you love music, if that's your thing, to be able to start the school day off in a room because the teacher's lesson plans were first 10 minutes, kids freestyle on the keyboard playing tunes of their choosing. I was like, what a wonderful way to start the day. That is so amazing. Because sometimes, you don't get a choice. You can choose your subjects, but you can't choose the order that you're in. So if you get to choose to do what you love and it happens to be the first period of the day, or maybe the last period of the day, that's wonderful. I will say that all schedules are not created equally. And I had this feeling about elective classes, not all of them. But this teacher had 5 classes, and of those 5 classes, 3 of them were very small, like 8 students, 3 students in one class. Like that is his roster, 3 students, 8 students in another, maybe 10 in one of his classes. Whereas core classes in this county, 33, 35, 30, 28, is all around 30. That's a lot. But he has 3 kids in one class, 5 in another. It's like I think not 5, like 7 or 8 in another, maybe 8 or 9 in another. His only larger classes were in the afternoon when he had chorus, which makes sense. You have to have a decent number of students to make up a chorus. But even those classes weren't like 30. They were smaller. So in the morning, we had AP Music Theory and then 2 keyboarding classes. And I love what the lessons that he left, because for the AP Music Theory, he had them choosing it wasn't choosing some music, and they had to write the music out on the board. It was some kind of, I think it's something similar to what they will see in the AP Music Theory exam. And they loved it, and they took it really seriously. They were writing things out on the board, and then there was a boy in the class who would, oh, they were chords, that's right, writing out these chords. There's a boy in the class who would play the chord after they'd written each one out. I pretended that I knew what I was talking about. I said, that chord didn't sound right. Play that again. Play it again, Sam. They actually thought I knew what I was talking about. I didn't know, but I do know if a chord sounds off. Say, aha, it sounds better now. And then they got to freestyle. And then the other classes, again, keyboarding classes, got to start the day with 10 minutes of freestyling. And then they got to choose a song for a recital that's coming up and practice that song. I thought it was a little odd that the kids didn't have headphones for their keyboards to plug it in so that only they can hear what they're playing. Because, like I said earlier, the resulting noise is that everybody is playing different things at the same time, and it was a little much to hear different noises. But at the same time, that is a nice noise to hear in a high school. Actually, to be completely honest, I'll take that over another class that I had where I was F this, F that, F this, F. Why? That was another day. It was like first thing in the morning, F bombs going off. I was like, why? So this was much nicer. The kids loved being there. This was, see, the thing with electives is the level 1 electives, like keyboarding 1, maybe chorus 1, 2D art 1, PE 1, whatever. The level 1 classes contain kids who want to be there, but they also contain kids who are put there to fill in their schedule. Like fill in the blank. Let's fill in the blank. This space here, put them in there. And those kids some of them might end up loving this subject, but a lot of them they're just there and they don't care much for it. When you get to the level 2 or 3, meaning that to be in 2D Art 2, you should have completed the prerequisite, which is 2D Art 1. And then you were actually making a decision to choose the next level, which means that you like that subject and probably are good at it too. That's a different type of student you're getting in there. You're getting students who are committed to this and connected to this. That's what I was seeing in those music classes, even though the keyboarding classes, I think one of them was a keyboard 1. But even still, I was seeing kids they may not have been the best pianists. Some of them were amazing, but they were definitely committed and they definitely wanted to be there. And even though the teacher wasn't there, they were not on their phones. They were playing the keyboards. In the afternoon, he had 2 chorus classes. And again, I thought he would leave bookwork. He did not leave bookwork. He left chorus work to prepare them for the upcoming competition in Florida. That's MPA. MPA is not a competition. It is it's their assessment. It's how they're assessed. And the school gets a grade. The class gets a grade, not the individual students. So they were practicing for that. And for that, they have to do, what would it be called? When you get a piece of music and you have to play it cold, well, with the chorus, it's you get a piece of music and you have to sing it cold. Like here's a song. You have 5 minutes. Now sing it as a chorus. And I guess what would happen is they would break off into sopranos, altos, tenors, and basses, and practice, and then come together and then do it. And I didn't know that they don't sing words to it when they do that. They just do like do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Like do, 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 mi, mi. I'm sure that's wrong. So they were leaders in that class. They did a warm-up. Oh my goodness, there were some talented singers in there, and the same pianist from keyboarding class, AP Music Theory class earlier in the morning, actually. Amazing. Their warm-up I was like blown away by their warm-up. And they were so committed. And then he had them choose a piece and then practice it, like break off into soprano, alto, tenor, bass, practice it, and then they each had to sing their part for me, for each other really, individually, and then they came together and sang it together. Oh my goodness, the most beautiful thing. I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, I feel like I'm back in an old church or cathedral in England, listening to a choral presentation at Christmas time. It was so beautiful. Honestly, almost brought me to tears. Now I understand why the chorus teacher at my kids' middle school would always cry after performances. It was so beautiful. I was just blown away by how beautiful these kids sounded with a song that they just picked up and just practiced. It sounded so sweet and so beautiful. And I was just thinking, to be a music teacher, to be a high school music teacher, to to hear this as the end result of your hard work of teaching. Oh my goodness. If they sounded like that after just, just picking up a song and just after one class period, what are they going to sound like at a concert at the end of the year or their MPA performance? It was beautiful. And I was just thinking, this is so different from teaching English. I wish I could play the keyboard because I can sing, but I don't read music, although I'm sure I could learn. I don't play the keyboard. If I did, I would have tried to be a probably middle school chorus teacher because I just think what they do is amazing. And now I got to experience it for one day and it was wonderful. I loved it. Really loved it. Would love to be a high school music teacher. Wow. So another day this week, it was another elective class. This time it was criminal justice. And they were different levels throughout the day. So the criminal justice one classes were, sorry, they were packed. They were too full. Too many kids in there. And I could just tell from my experience in teaching that some of those kids were just placed in there. Like there was one girl who, she was brand new. She just came. She just came to this country from Haiti. And she was placed in this class. And I could just tell that there was just like, where's there a space? Okay, put her in here. You could just tell by the way that the students were behaving in that class, in the larger classes, in the level one classes, that not everybody had signed up for that class. And that's a really interesting class. Criminal justice is like, police procedures, that kind of thing, and how the criminal justice system works. But the level 2/3 classes, it was completely different. First of all, those were smaller because now you've become more niche and you have to have completed the prerequisite, the first level class. And now you have kids who are probably perhaps thinking about doing that for a career and want to be there. They were a little older at this point, 11th and 12th grade. And you could just tell it was a different atmosphere in the class that they were more invested. But the behavior in those classes was completely different. The kids were more mature. And like I said, they wanted to be there. That makes a difference. It really does for the teachers. And then I also did art this week. Our classrooms are interesting because they're kind of messy, but that's just how it is. You know what I mean? That's just how it is. So this class it was messy, but what's interesting is the student desks were clean and tidy. It was just like the art. It was 3D art. So you're talking about clay, so there's going to be mess. And the teacher was funny. She was like, because, a lot of these schools, it's not necessarily that the teacher is absent. It's that the teacher is proctoring or doing something else, doing IEPs. And she was like, she was going over the lessons with me and she was like, please do not feel obligated to clean off my desk. She's, this is how my desk is. A lot of subs come in and they try to clean it off and think they're doing me a favor. Do not clean up my desk. I understood what she meant because my desk was always messy as a teacher. But if you tidied it up, I would be lost because although it was messy, I knew where everything was. The thing about me was my desk was messy, but my desk was the only part that was messy. The rest of the room was manageable. It was, it was okay. But my desk was a hot mess. I actually saw another desk this week that was awful. It was a biology class, and it reminded me kind of, there was a few different areas. There was the teacher's desk. There was a desk behind her with some papers. The desk behind her with some papers was messy and reminded me of my desk. But then the desk to the side of her desk it was like 10 times worse. And I was like looking at it and thinking, as bad as I was with my desk, it never got to that point. I can see an administrator coming in and saying, You need some help with that? I can get a student to maybe help you with that because it was bad. I said to the students, "Is it always like that?" She said, "Yeah, it's always like that." But I kind of understand it though. Some of us, that's just how our brains work. And she probably knows where everything is. So I didn't even try to tidy it up. I mean, yeah. One thing I learned this week in my different adventures in electives is that, I mean, we're in January now. Whatever procedures the teachers have put in place for the students or whatever expectations they have set, those procedures and those expectations are now in place. Meaning, the art teacher has a bell on the door. Students would come. Look, this is a school where kids are always, sorry, not always, where kids are frequent. Tardiness is like a normal thing. I don't even turn my attendance in until the end of the period because otherwise I'd be constantly changing it. I have to constantly change is what I mean. So I just hold on to it because kids are constantly coming in tardy throughout the whole period. Every period, not just first period, every period. So she has a bell because the room is large, so she has to hear maybe the knocks on the door not as audible. The bell would ring and someone would knock on the door and I'd say to the students, "Can you get that?" And the students were like, "We're not allowed to." I said, "What do you mean?" "She doesn't want us to. She doesn't let us answer the door. You have to answer it." Which is actually very different. This is high school because usually kids are always clamoring over each other to open the door. Well, maybe that's more middle school. Yeah, but usually the kids always get up to open it because they want to get up and move around, or they want to get to the door and then see it's their friend and say, "I'm not letting you in," and start acting silly. But when I went to the door to open it, I saw there was a sign there that said, "Do not open the door. I will open the door." This is a teacher who has established rules and procedures, and those kids were not breaking those rules and procedures, even though the teacher wasn't in the classroom. So that's a teacher who's really established those rules and procedures, and the kids take them seriously. Because think about it, what you see in a lot of classrooms is what the teachers perhaps set, they break it when the substitute's there, but meaning they break the rules. But you could tell that this woman was not playing. They weren't breaking any rules and procedures. There was something else that I told a girl. So there was a girl who she was, "I need to go to the restroom because I put my pants on inside out. I need to change it." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" She said, "My pants are inside out. I need to go to the restroom." And I was like, "Well, you got to wait 10 minutes into class or whatever till I write you a pass." And she was like, "I need to go now." I said, "Just wait a few more minutes." Nobody can even tell. I can't even tell. I said, "But the art room was large and it had like little rooms off it, like little offices off it." I said, "Why don't you just go in one of those rooms and change it?" "She doesn't let us in there. We're not allowed to go in there." This is like, this is somebody who's established rules and procedures. These kids are not playing. But that was not the case in another classroom I was in that week where the kids would just, it was a free for all. The way those kids were acting, it told me that I don't think that that teacher is as strict as the art teacher was because those kids were off the chains in a way that I feel like when your teacher's strict and the teacher has established rules and procedures and you know she's not playing or he's not playing, there's a certain boundary that you will not cross when he or she is not present. That was being crossed in this other classroom. It was like, it was just a free for all. They were just wild. But that was not the case in the art classroom. Art is a very interesting elective. In all my years of teaching, because I taught English, would teach it in a very creative way. So there was a lot of there's a lot of drawing involved. Yeah, we would write essays, but I would have kids do assignments and projects that were also had a creative element to it. Sometimes those were things that they could choose, like like choice assignments. And you would always have artists every year who would create these beautiful things that would actually end up on the wall. And I would always say to them, "Wow, you're a really good artist. I bet you take art. Do you take art? Have you taken art?" And you would always get the same response. It was like an eye roll, sucking teeth, or something like that. I was like, "What?" And they would always say the same thing, that they would try art in middle school or high school, because usually I would teach like 10th graders, so they'd already tried it. But they would be frustrated in art class. And it's not the teacher, because the whole time I was the whole time I was in the high school, teaching high school was 11 years. We went through quite a few different art teachers. So it's not the teacher. But their complaint was that they felt stifled. They felt like they were put into a box and had to do things a certain way, and that somehow stifled and blocked their creativity. It was always that frustration. She wants it done a certain way, and I could understand what they were saying. Is that creativity that's in them that wants to do things a certain way, the way that they're used to doing, or the way that they feel led to do it. But the teacher would have a rigidity about him or her that said, "No, this is the way to do it." That would always frustrate my creative students. I would always hear that from them. Um, so that's the interesting thing about art. But this art class seemed to have a lot of students who I think were just put in there because they were very large classes, and the level 1 classes, I think it's like that. But with it being 3D art, not 2D art, I think there's probably more of a level of interest because it is interesting to create things, you know. I saw some things that they had created, before Christmas break, like some vases or something. It looked like they were working on some 3D structures, like human structures. So that's interesting, you know? Um, you can get and keep kids' interest with projects like that in a way that we will always struggle to do in pre-calculus or English too. Writing essays and doing algebraic formulas, you know? So I always envy elective teachers because they get to do the fun stuff. They get to draw out kids' creativity. Their classes, they get to be like an outlet, a creative outlet for kids, whereas our classes, our core classes, are very academic and very um, some can be rigid. I think there can be a lot of struggle for kids in some of our, especially in English or in math. But then they get to have that creative outlet and just be themselves and explore their talents and their gifts in music or in art or in ROTC or in PE. They get to blow off steam, you know. A lot of kids hate PE, but a lot of kids really love it. So yeah, I envy elective teachers. I don't envy them having class loads of 35, 34. I've never seen 35. Well, I have seen 35. Yeah, I think I saw it in art class this week. But I have seen over 30. But I wouldn't mind teaching music with 3 kids in a class or 8 kids in a class. Yeah. But I also know just from talking to colleagues over the years that you can get some real prima donnas in these elective classes, especially like a chorus class or a music class. You can get some students who've been told that they are everything and all things to everyone, and you can't tell them anything. So I know that that is a challenge too. My kid needs to have the solo because he's been playing since he was 3 and he's wonderful and amazing. So you better give him the solo. Okay. Anyway, my kids all did music, did very well. 2 youngest did very well in orchestra all throughout high school. And I think it was that outlet that they needed throughout the day to just be creative and not necessarily have to study. I mean, the practice at home, not necessarily have to be on academically. Um, yeah, elective classes. I wish I could teach electives. All right. So it was a short week, as I said. So I didn't have much to say. But I did purposefully hit up elective classes because I wanted to see that experience. And I have a few more next week that I'm very excited about. Unless it gets canceled next week, I get to teach agriculture, as the kids call it, agriculture class, which is very interesting for me because I do not like animals. I do not like to be in the vicinity of animals. And in a lot of these schools I have seen that have agriculture programs, they have animals in the back, goats, cows. What else have I seen? Goats and cows, something else, but I can't think of it right now. Oh, like I think chickens. I don't like being in the vicinity of animals. Don't like to be anywhere. So why I'm signed up for agriculture class, I don't know why. But perhaps it was what I'm hoping. I'm hoping that it will be bookwork indoors. I don't want to go out in the back with the goats. And if we do, I'll stand back. But anyway, yeah, that's all I have for this week. Guest teacher. It was a short week. It was an intro to semester 2. The kids were half asleep, except for one class where they were throwing out the F bomb at the beginning of school. Uh, they were very turned up. Very turned up for the first week back. First period. Wow. Yeah, that was it. That was my week of substitute teaching, doing elective classes only. I loved it. All right, I'll see you next week. Bye.